Welcome to MAP, the bi-weekly market access podcast hosted by me, Dr. Stefan Walzer. I am the innovator of Market Access 4.0 and a health economist by training and working in the fields of market access, reimbursement, pricing, and health economics since 2004. Discover Market Access 4.0 and unveil the future with our innovative solutions. Max Insights, our fast and easy AI-based reimbursement planning platform. Dobo, our new revolutionizing way of creating reimbursement dossiers across the globe with the first and only dossier writing AI bot. Cubo, our new AI-based objection handling platform. And Waffle, train with Waffle's virtual reality genius in an immersive environment and with an AI-based counterpart. We are Market Access 4.0. So check out our website, marketaccess4-0.com. And now let's dive into the current discussions, processes, and trends in market access across the globe. So welcome back to another episode of the Market Access podcast. Today, we have a very special topic I would probably think of, especially as we're doing a lot of market access content normally. We now combine it with something more broader, which is called change management. And within that, we focus as well a bit, obviously, on AI within the market access area. And for that, I have a great guest. I have Kroschinski, who will also introduce himself in a second. And he has had as well already quite a lot of experience, I think, in change management in a broader sense, Jan. But please feel free to quickly introduce yourself.
Thank you, Stefan. First of all, thank you for having me. Glad to be here. A bit of background on myself. My name is Kroschinski. I'm a freelance consultant for digital transformation in pharmaceuticals and healthcare. I've been doing this for the better of about 7 years now. I'm getting older, yeah, about 7 years now. I originally started my career as an entrepreneur. I've built my first software company during my studies, then continued building a couple of more companies together with my former investors. And I'm now very happy to offer a similar service to my clients. I essentially do 3 things for them. First of all, I help with, I'd say, digital consulting in general. So to get an idea on the strategy and what is actually possible in the market on a line kind of on the digital initiatives. I always say, in German, we would say, you have to be able to think from here to the wall. So von hier bis an die Wand denken, I think, doesn't really translate very well in English, but the usual consultant job. The second one is probably my biggest avenue, and that is project management for digital initiatives. And that's also where the change management experience comes from, because you will never have a successful project without change management. It's just always part of it. And then the third part is the venture building. So helping companies come up with new business ideas, but also putting them actually into form. So I consider myself usually very hands-on consultant, less of the person who makes pretty PowerPoint slides, but more of someone who gets things actually done. And I'm always on the border of kind of between business and technology. I myself have a background in business, but I've always been passionate about technology, and I've been dedicating my career to that translation of the two worlds.
That sounds really, really interesting. I think it perfectly fits. I mean, we also obviously have had a separate discussion before, and also on different kind of potential other initiatives. But maybe taking again what I said very briefly in my intro. Obviously, we're coming out of the market access area, and we have also spoken about, let's say, different ideas where and how AI platforms, tools can and should probably as well be used within that area. But I mean, from our experience, we have some, obviously, let's say, quite open and willing to as well invest from a time resource perspective into AI, and maybe even at least start with a pilot study. But of course, and you mentioned that, one of your key areas is also strategy. So, of course, the whole kind of opportunities with AI need to align with the strategic objectives of a company. So how does that basically affect the application then of AI within a company? And maybe also, because I think you also touched base very briefly, what role does basically leadership in a broader sense play in managing that transition?
Very nice question, Stefan. I'd say let's maybe start with the alignment of strategic goals and AI.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say, first of all, we should never forget that AI is a tool. It's not a means, it's you use it to achieve something. It's a very powerful tool, but it's a tool. So I believe that you always start with your goals first. And then you look, how can AI maybe help you achieve them? So I wouldn't go AI first and then see what we can do with that. I think we don't have the luxury of doing that in the first place. But first start with your goals and then check, hey, how can AI maybe help us achieve these goals? How? Once a company has gathered a lot of experience with AI, this might be a bit more of a hybrid modus, I'd say. So then AI can actually maybe even inform the goal setting, because you will be able to set goals you might not think realistic before. But I'd say first start with the goals, then AI. Regarding the second part of your question, so what role does leadership play? I'd say, as with any change, leadership plays a tremendous role. So I'd say if leadership isn't visibly, and I stress the visibly, on board, good luck with your change. It's like a parent who will says, hey, you don't eat that many sweets, and then starts munching M&Ms and chocolates, etc. It doesn't work. It's the same in a company. If leadership doesn't visibly show the things that they want their people to do, it doesn't work. And so as a result, I think it's crucial for leadership to be on board here, and also show that they know what they're talking about. As a result, I'd say if you want to prepare your company, I would try to give leadership some time to actually educate themselves on AI, because it's unbelievable how fast this field develops. And I mean, in my career so far, I've never seen anything like it. Not even close. It's incredible. And to get a bit of an idea how fast that is, I have a quote I hold very dear from Ray Kurzweil, who gives a bit of an idea why this, everybody talks about exponential technology, who bit summarizes on what that actually means. And his quote is that our intuition about the future is linear, right? But the reality is that information technology is exponential, and that this makes a very profound difference. So if I take 30 steps linearly, I get to 30, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if I make this a quadratic function, so exponential, if I then take 30 steps, I suddenly get to 1 billion. It's a crazy difference. So I'd advise leaders to get regular updates on technology, maybe even have a small dedicated team in-house to do nothing else. But, if you depend on company size, obviously, who do nothing else but screen for the newest technologies, get an understanding, and see how they can actually apply it to the company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, let's say the quote by Kurzweil always, let's say, shows how fast things are really moving. And I mean, if you, let's say, just have a bit of a look, or maybe listen to one or the other kind of podcasts in the AI area, it's just unbelievable. I mean, I'm totally with you. I mean, you can feel the changes and the progress every week. I mean, It's not just there's another version of, but applications, changes. It's just unbelievable. I'm totally with you. So I could understand that some people might be even overwhelmed and might not even see the opportunities for themselves, because it might be so much, which is basically getting into that kind of mind, right?
100%. So, I dedicate a good part of my day in educating myself to, be able to also bring that knowledge to my clients. And I can't keep up. I'm very honest. I think I'm usually on the very forefront of things. Mm-hmm. But even for me, I can't check usually I like checking models myself, I like to play around with them. And there's so much happening in such a short time. It's very, very difficult. For example, now the OpenAI has brought a new deep research module, a new model to compete with the Gemini deep research model. It's supposedly amazing for research. I still have to try it out. It's probably very good at summarizing research papers and doing actually the work of your personal lab assistant, so to speak, or the research assistant rather, not lab assistant. I've yet to try it out. So yeah, it's a lot.
I fully agree. So I mean, if we maybe take a step back, and obviously we all know that people are maybe a bit more conservative when it comes, let's say, to their own life in general, at least the average, I would say. I mean, one could potentially understand that there's at least a bit of resistance to adopt AI, especially when it comes to the, let's say, own work, to the own job. Mm-hmm. So when we're coming back to, let's say, market access, which is in a way, I would also say, a bit conservative, what are the kind of common forms of resistance to adopt AI in that area, and how could maybe change management or change management strategies address these concerns? So what are your thoughts on that before we maybe even come to, let's say, some of the next steps where maybe education might as well play a big role?
Right. Yeah. So change resistance is definitely a thing. I think humans are creatures of habit. I'm a creature of habit. You probably are, Stefan. Even if we like new things, obviously, still most of what we do is probably habit based. So it's very normal that there's resistance. And maybe before I get to the common concerns I usually witness, maybe let me quickly frame what I think change management is. Because I feel if people hear change management, they think of someone in, I don't know, colorful clothes holding speeches in front of people and handing out flyers with nice graphics to convince people that they somehow should behave differently. I think, that communication part is part of change management, but really for me, it's removing any kind of obstacle to change. And those are often very practical, process-driven, compliance-driven topics. And this communication and this kind of mindset change is just one of many, many topics. So with that little disclaimer, maybe let me quickly think about the main concerns I see. So I guess, first of all, there's personal concerns, of course, right? How does this affect me? How does this affect my job? And here, actually, communication indeed is your main tool. I'd say the worst thing you can do is create more uncertainty as a company. And one way to do it would, for example, be you make a big statement. Okay, we now start experimenting with AI. It's like, okay, congratulations. Everyone in the company has now no idea what's happening and is kind of insecure if, what does it mean? They want to cut my job? Do they want to automate it? No idea. Like uncertainty, you sowing chaos, essentially. If instead you go very targeted and say like, hey, and you go also usually problem focused, right? So you say like, hey, we remember you were telling us about you have to do your making your first AMNOG drafts, dossier drafts takes forever. We might have found a solution for you. And that just happens to be AI based. Mm-hmm. Is usually, if you solve a problem for someone, they're usually way more open to solution or to a change instead of just saying, hey, something changes. So this is how I would usually frame it. The second area of concerns is data protection wise, obviously, with that kind of topics. And this is on the one hand, like GDPR, data privacy related, and on the other hand, of course, proprietary data related, especially for pharmaceutical companies. Depending on your use case, I think you have two avenues you can take. If we talk high risk models and a lot of proprietary data, probably the best thing you can do is self-host a large language model. Because then you can be very sure that you will follow the GDPR and you follow the AI Act that is now in place, and you've a lot of control there. And the second one is you find a provider you trust, use a third party, and you ensure they follow the GDPR and the AI Act. That is also very possible. And I would say that really depends on the use case. You can't just give a blank recommendation for one or the other. I would love to use more third parties. I think regulation makes it a bit harder. It's not impossible, for sure not, luckily. Because especially given how fast everything develops, you can't build everything yourself. It's impossible. Don't do it. Like you will always have a third party that has probably done a better job already. And we can use this. So I definitely always have, the buy or the build decision both in mind here. Another area for pharma companies, if it comes to concerns, is probably reliability. So, you put something in, then you have your black box, and then suddenly something comes out. And how do I ensure that this always has the same quality? So that's definitely also an area of concern I see. And here we have GXP concerns suddenly coming in as well, right? So our computer system validation friends will tell us that this is not super easy, but it is luckily also possible. So we have ways to ensure AI is reliable, and we can validate it. It is possible. It's just a bit more difficult because it's stochastic and not deterministic in nature. But what always works, of course, is you use AI for drafting things, for suggesting things. This is usually a relatively low hurdle entry to AI. And I guess finally you have, and then I close my little speech here. You have the explainability topic, which is also mandated by more and more regulatory agencies. And that is, you need to find a way to actually explain what is happening in the background. So what's happening in the black box of the LLM, and probably the most approved way, so to speak, to do this is SHAP. So you have essentially what you do is you do some funny math. If you're into math, you can look up papers on this. It's a very fun read, I'm sure. I've had a little check and was like, okay, this is too much for me. But the basic idea is you explain. You in the end, once you did your SHAP analysis, you will see which features of the model will actually explain how much of the prediction. Let's say, for example, you have a model that predicts whether a cancer patient will respond to a new drug, right? And the model might predict something like there's an 85% chance the patient will respond to it. So, okay, cool. Now, how did you get to that result? I mean, you would ask a person that, right? If you had like a research assistant, someone in front of you, you'd be like, okay, cool, but like, how did you get to that data? And with SHAP, you can say something like, okay, cool. So let's say, for example, the patient is over 70, and then the model said, like, okay, this gives a minus 10% chance for the response, right? Or the tumor size itself leads itself very well to this kind of drug, and that leads to a 30% increase in the response. So with this, you have suddenly explainability in the model. It's not and can also get rid of that concern from regulatory agencies, which is very nice.
No, agree. I mean, that's I think that's giving quite interesting kind of, let's say, areas. Obviously, I mean, I like, obviously, as you started, which is communication is key. I think just getting out flyers is not communication, because I mean, ultimately, if you want or need to adopt any kind of change, I mean, you need to change the habits of individuals, and that is very hard to, let's say, capture. I mean, whoever has had an idea on New Year's Eve how to change him or herself, right, in the new year, knows exactly what we're talking about, right? So after 2 or 3 weeks, it's already gone. So that is why, and where you can see how difficult it might really be, right? So it's not just, as you totally agree with that, as you just said, handing something out. You need to really go through that, and obviously, as you just said, start with the problem they have, and then provide a solution, which is that's much easier, let's say, also to capture from a person's perspective. A couple of things where I always have, let's say, discussions with people. I mean, if I listen, and I'm totally with you. I mean, I heard that many times, right? I mean, which is especially around reliability or explainability, as you have as well just said,
Right.
which makes sense in a way, right? However, sometimes I just think, I mean, if I have been going to a doctor, for example, to take your diagnostic example in the past, right? And they have basically said, look, you would need to have this or that treatment. I mean, most of the times people have probably not even asked for any kind of background, right? Of course, we have institutions, if there's a new drug and whatever, and within that, you have had as well given kind of explanation you need to have been given, right? But sometimes it's just more like, okay, there's a black box, but we always had black boxes. I mean, now it's a machine. Before it was maybe a human, right? So to me, it's not such a big difference. And also, I mean, as you said before, stochastic and deterministic, very good point. For example, when you think also, I mean, you put that example in there with the dossier writing. But I mean, if I would be thinking to put a human with the same literature, maybe 3 times at a desk and just to tell them 3 times, after they finished it, to write a dossier, it will always look different. Very similar, but different. That's probably the same with AI, isn't it?
I'm 100% with you. Like 100%. Like I think regulation is too much based on fear and too little on opportunity.
Yeah.
Because the opportunities are amazing and the fears are, it's the fears are, it's somehow interesting that humans are stochastic, they're not deterministic.
Yeah.
As you said, right? There's always some randomness if humans are involved. But if humans are involved, you're like, yeah, this is fine, right? This is safe. Nothing can happen here. Humans are involved. But if it's machines, like, oh god, no, wait, what? I don't. Should we really? Which is, I consider irrational to an extent, for sure. And again, to go on the opportunities part, also if you come to medicine, if you tell me, personally, my personal opinion, if you tell me, Jan, we're gonna use all your data and you have no idea how, we can't tell you, we have no idea, but the outcome is you're gonna live 6 more healthy years. Am I gonna see like, I'm sorry, no, that's
First explain it to me.
That is, yeah, please explain it to me, otherwise I don't want that.
Exactly.
I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna sign that deal. And that's my personal opinion. I do understand that there's concerns for data privacy, and every person has different kind of also ways they what do they feel comfortable with, and I respect that. But I can say that's my personal opinion.
So we're pretty much aligned. Just the last thing on that, because I mean, I was also speaking a couple of months ago with a good friend of mine in the US, and where we also discussed, I mean, that dossier AI, I think you have also brought in a bit earlier, and he was also bringing first, I heard as well from some of my colleagues when I was quickly introducing what we are going to speak about, that maybe hallucination might also be an issue. He was just taking that, he was not commenting in the team, and then he was just looking at me, giving me a second. I was waiting until he was maybe continuing the sentence, and he was just starting to laugh, and he just said, you know what? I just had a dossier written by a human on my desk yesterday evening as well. And you know what? I just thought 80% was hallucination on there. It was just crap. A very extreme example, right? But it just goes back to what we said earlier, which doesn't mean that we should just trust 100% AI, right? That's quite clear. I mean, and that's also what you said. It might just help us. It's a tool, right? So we should maybe rather keep again, or maybe go back again and use our brain, our experience, logic thinking, and all of that kind of stuff to further improve the outcome we have seen so far than with that AI tool.
100%. And I mean, I wouldn't just blindly trust the output of an AI.
Absolutely.
But so for an important decision, I don't blindly trust the output of a human for an important decision. I would never do that. You always have like 4I principles for a reason, at least that. I mean, depending on the process. So Yeah, makes 100% sense. I'm very much with you, Stefan.
Absolutely. Great point. But maybe just coming back quickly on, let's say, the market access piece. And I think you brought in already a couple of things, right? I mean, problem focus or solution focus based on a problem is probably better. When you would just be thinking about, let's say, departments, and you could also take maybe different examples you have had. I mean, what are maybe kind of stepwise approaches which would make sense, especially for maybe teams, right? I mean, because obviously within teams it's even more difficult, right? In comparison to just convincing one person, right? I mean, you have a lot of individuals, you have basically team dynamic and all of the kind of stuff. So what might be their steps where you just think that makes a lot of sense, at least thinking about before then introducing something innovative, something you like, maybe in an AI tool?
I would probably start with the people who are most excited about it. Try to identify those. So with any adoption of a new thing, so to speak, with any change, with any adoption, you will always have your innovators, people who might not even who love shiny new things, let's say, who need the newest iPhone, who look into the newest technology, and they love that. And you will have those in your company. They're usually very easy to identify because you tell them, here's a shiny new thing, who wants to have anything to do with it, and they will jump on board. It's very, very easy to identify. And from there, once these people are on board, the next people come on board. The people are quite interested in new things, but are a bit more reluctant. They first want to see a bit of actually what's happening. And then you bring those on board. And though over time, essentially, depending on your on the reluctance of people, they will over time chime in. So I think very important, focus on the people who actually want to do it instead of focusing a lot of energy on the people who don't want to do it. Because those usually come around at some point. If everybody's doing it, those people will also come around. If you try to start with those people because you're afraid otherwise, it won't. Not everybody will take on. Things get more difficult, and it will often fail. Definitely start with the people appreciative of it, not the ones who have a lot of resistance. And then, just come back to my earlier point. Start with one tool, one thing that just helps them. Instead of a general workshop about AI, what can we do? And in the end, everyone is kind of excited, some more, some others, but nobody really knows what to do with this. You can, it's nice. People are, if you want to entertain people and educate them a bit, but I would rather have a specific use case in mind, if possible, deliver a solution to them, and then it just happens to be AI. It's not, honestly, it's just a technology. It's not that big of a deal from a user point of view, because if you use these kind of tools, they're usually the same to use like your normal Microsoft environment or any other application. It just happens to be AI in the background, which makes it a bit more magical because things happen in a way that you did not perceive possible. So I also wouldn't make too much big of a deal out of it, in the sense that, oh my God, AI, everyone will be so reluctant. I don't believe that's true. Actually, I'm sure, I would say more people in your company are using AI at this very moment to make their life easier. And if it's just ChatGPT, without you knowing it. I would rather wait. It's this way around rather than people are very reluctant to this change.
Yeah,
it is one that is usually it has a reasonable level of excitement with it.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and I think that makes again a lot of sense. I think to firstly identify early adapters, and I mean to make that even a bit more practical, that would be, or an option for that is also, for example, a pilot, right? I mean, to go with the pilot case, identify the ones who would really, let's say, be part of that pilot, discuss with them how it works, maybe fine tune it as well, and then try to see how to potentially scale it up, right?
100%. You don't have to start with, you don't have to onboard 1 million users day one, so to speak, or thousands of employees. You can start with a small test case, see how it works, how it fits in. And that also makes your risk as a company very low, right? You can, on the one hand, say like, hey, let's do this multi-million-dollar platform project where we already, try to interact with all the internal APIs, and it's this 3-year project management effort, and then might fail. Or you start with a small pilot and then scale up from there. So, like the startups would do, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And just come back again to what you said also a bit earlier, which is communication is key. When I would be thinking again about a bigger kind of company, I mean, you have the most excited people maybe behind, you have identified a pilot. Would you already as well communicate, for example, to the whole department what you're doing, what you want to achieve, what the long-term goal is? Or is that rather, let's say, keep it simple, keep it small, we just do it. If it works, then we're going to communicate it also on a broader sense, or maybe there's something between.
Right. I'd say that really depends on how the communication in your company is usually structured. What I mean with that, just as an example. Mm-hmm. Most of the time when I visit a new client, I feel the employees are rather overwhelmed with all the communication they get. Mm-hmm. There's this newsletter here from the department. There's a newsletter from the global organization. There's the leadership has this thing. They are in this interest group. And so they get 10 email updates per week on new things that are happening. Well, you won't have any visibility there anyways, and you can just add to that flood of information that people are only mildly excited about, if at all. In this case, I would say okay, focus on the really big successes, start with it slow first and make it big once you have something big to actually show, right? So target your message to the actual impact, not how much you want the impact to be, right? Because everyone wants the giant splash in the company, high visibility with management and everything. Everybody tries to make it as big as possible. But if everyone tries to do that, in the end, nobody's going to read it because people look through that kind of nonsense very, very fast. But if you have a big announcement to make, then make a splash, definitely.
Exactly.
And then you sometimes have different form of communication style, usually in smaller companies, where you just very encouraged to share small successes, but on a even more rapid, well, there might be a Slack channel or whatever, where they, have daily updates on people who succeed something. Yeah, of course, that's the company culture. Splash around doesn't hurt, I'd say.
No, I fully agree, and I think that the Slack one is a good one. We have as well just been earlier this year presenting one of our AI options, which is more that with the virtual reality goggles, to a big pharma company, and we have been invited to the office. So there were, I think, 10 or 12 people. It was basically the early adopters, right? So they want to be part of it. They want to see how to adopt and how to basically utilize it, right? But I think what was really interesting, besides the really great discussion, was, especially when we were then at that, let's say, more practical piece where we brought our use case and they used the goggles and they commented or whatever. Then we had suddenly people just taking photos, and their comment was just simply, you know what? We're just putting that into the Slack communication, also to management, because that is where they need to see the next steps. They need to see how AI could be implemented as okay, that's interesting, which is obviously a bit of different, right? I mean, if you use an AI just on your computer, it's hard to take. You can do a picture, but you don't see anything, right?
Right.
I mean, if you have suddenly a couple of people sitting with those goggles in a room, it looks different than before, right? But it just resonates to what you just said. It depends also on the culture, also on the communication culture within those companies.
Right. And I think the idea with the combining it with VR is there's some very nice use cases for that. And it's sexy.
Yeah.
If possible, make change sexy. Make it interesting, make it fun. Don't make it too corporate, too much. No, I feel once you have a big organization, people always forget that everyone there is a human. I don't know why that is. I don't understand it. It's like suddenly people seem to be employees, not humans anymore. And employees want, they can't have fun. I don't know. I don't understand it. I think if you can make change fun, that actually is really, really, really helpful. And I think, having some gadgets involved, so to speak, like VR goggles that are actually not only gadgets, but actually useful, for example, if it comes to training and medtech, I've seen some very cool use cases there. Then, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, fully agree. That's a good one. Yeah. So, I mean, we're coming a bit towards the end, and what I would love to as well have your thoughts on. I mean, obviously, I think we both agree. I mean, AI and everything around is here to stay. I mean, here to stay sounds very static. Obviously, AI is evolving so fast, so there has a couple of different, let's say, aspects in there. So, how should companies, maybe even just now at least, prepare to remain competitive and innovative in the coming years? So to take all of the different things now into account, what should they basically do now that they are still, let's say, probably even in the market in the next couple of years?
So it's as you said, given how fast everything develops, I don't think it's a simple question to answer. I'd say two things are crucial. One, get your uppermost leadership and everyone below that who's in a reasonable decision-making position, for them, give them I see a use case for general AI education, where you show them use cases from the industry, where you show them what AI, the newest AI developments, and that not as a, once a year workshop, but maybe every 3 months, they get an update from a dedicated team that can be inside your company, can be outside, doesn't matter. But your leadership should be aware of what is happening so they can see and bring forward the potential applications within the company. So there's that. And I know that's a big ask because, I know how usual calendar looks like, but I believe it is so worth it. Being aware of what's happening. And then there's also being fascinated by it, being open to investments in the area, to decisions in the area. There actually, you do not need to wait until we have this one use case and now we try to get everything on board. I think with leadership, splurge, go broad and give them an idea. It's very helpful. I think that's one. The second, personally, I think it is valuable, and I even see that actually in companies from a lot of different industry, and even in younger companies who are usually very, very tech heavy and very much on the forefront of things. They usually have a couple of people, depending on company size, who do nothing else but checking for developments in technology, and that is at the moment mostly AI, but that can also be different developments. Summarize this for leadership, and most importantly, look for applications within the companies. So I would say there's this development of centers of excellence in AI. I see happening in pharma companies, which and also in other companies that, in my opinion, make a lot of sense. Now, I'd say be careful with trying to reinvent the wheel here, because if you check carefully, you probably have something similar already in-house. Somehow you might have said an in-house consultancy, you might have some, chief of staff kind of gathering where a lot of people are already very knowledgeable about the problems that need to be solved in the company. And then maybe add to that a couple of people who might not have the domain knowledge, but then have the technical or knowledge and the ability to apply technology. I think that's the most important part, not even execute on it, but apply it. So do the transfer from kind of tech to business and the other way around, who then can work together to bring really cool use cases to your company. And these people can then also work with, for example, compliance. You need to work with I would definitely start working with the compliance team to have a clear framework on how you want to use AI in your company. You can usually use your current IT methodology when it comes to new technologies, because there's usually, you have your demand management, and then you have your compliance checks, et cetera. And you can usually do not need to reinvent this for AI, but you might need to adjust a couple of things. And I would think, the center of excellence, so with the experts together, we can go to the different teams in the company and work with them to actually get a regulatory framework out. And they can maybe work on then some more communication materials, etc. Really depends on how your company is structured. I don't think there's the blueprint for a good AI center of excellence, but those are just some topics that are potentially relevant here.
Perfect. No, I think that was great insights. I think around let's say all of the key parts of change management linked to market access. So thanks a lot, Jan. Looking forward also to further discussions, further insights. As you said, I think the whole kind of future has maybe just now started. So let's just see what else will come in the next couple of few years, months, days, hours, whatever it is. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I can tell you I am extremely excited. It's an incredible time to be in technology, and I think it's going to have incredible results for all of us.
Perfect. Thank you, Jan.
Thanks, Stefan. Bye.
What a great discussion with Jan Kroschinski on change management, which sounds firstly maybe a bit dry, but as I hope we have as well done in the last bit more than 30 minutes, it was very lively. I think key thing is, I love that quote, make change sexy, meaning obviously show where and how any solution with, for example, AI can solve a problem. I think we have quickly discussed also a couple of times within those examples our solution with the dossier writing AI Dobo, which can create a draft, or as we call it, the kickstart dossier within a couple of very few days, including already the first quality control, which is a big difference to, let's say, waiting 4, 5, 6 months until a draft dossier is available. And then just the strategic insight, the review and everything can start, meaning you can really solve such an issue instead of waiting. You can really start directly working on your case early on. I think very important also when you would be maybe thinking of adopting AI, any kind of AI within your company, of course, start with the early adopters, which make a lot of sense. Maybe take a pilot or a test case, which is also decreasing the risk for the company, obviously, and you can also see where and how it could best apply. So ultimately, and I think that's also very important, it's probably more as well, keep a kind of positive tone, which is more, as Jan said it, opportunity taking instead of risk thinking, which I think is also a very important component when thinking about change management and the adaptation of AI. That was an episode of MAP, the Market Access podcast provided by Mars Market Access and Pricing Strategy, which is your healthcare consultancy in the German-speaking markets. MAP is available every second week with a new episode, so watch out. And in case you might have questions, contact me directly and or visit our website on www.marketaccess-pricingstrategy.de.